The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts ownership or management. And now, on with the show. This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Craig L. Hayes Show. I'm Craig L. Hayes. We have Paul Chadwick here in Barry Manilow, and Barry Manilow's room is right next door to us, but we're in Elvis Presley's dressing room here at the Westgate Resort, doing this show on what goes on behind the scenes. And we're going to continue on. We're going to go back a little bit in history now that we got a little bit of an overview from Paul. We're going to go back and say, let's take it back to where something we're both very familiar with, Splash. You know, a lot of people get that. I loved doing that show the first couple of years I did it, and then after that it just became Splash, you know.
Yeah, then it became Splashless.
Yeah, Splashless and ice. How could be a show called Splash when it has no water?
I know.
Weird. But it did that for a while. You were on the Pyro crew with Mike Criswell.
Initially.
And then what'd you do? What'd you roll into after that? You know,
At Splash. I think I was there for about a year, and Phil Carter came to me and said, "Hey, I need a relief head carpenter when I'm gone. Can you take over?" I said, "Sure, why not?" So he taught me his cues, and I relieved him on a regular day or 2 days, I guess, out of the week when he was off. And the very first day that I soloed, Splash had these huge doors that so the main curtain was taken out, and a set of huge heavy doors were put in, and those doors had an annoying feature of falling off the track every so often. And then it kind of was a bit of a showstop, depending upon where you were in the show, because now you couldn't close the doors to reset behind. It was wide open or halfway open or 2/3 of the way open, wherever it was that it fell off the track. And it took us a little bit, because they were so heavy, to get them back on the track, or at the very least to open them so that we could go with the rest of the show with them open. And then, there were other things that had to happen at that point, but at least the doors were out of the way. So my very first day soloing without Phil there, the doors fell off the track, of course.
right into the fire.
Yep, right into the fire. So anyway, I had a period of time which was very enjoyable for me, where I was doing pyro for a little bit. I was relieving on the lighting console for a few days a week, and I was relieving the head carpenter a few days a week. So every day I could walk in and have a different set of cues, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that kind of morphed into, at one point, they decided that, this was in the 90s, that we had two lighting consoles. One was handling the automated lighting, which is the one that I ran, and the other one was handling the static lighting. They decided that they were going to try to eliminate some labor and cut some costs. And one way that they could do that would be to consolidate those lighting consoles. At that point in the history of lighting, we were starting to see more consoles that were more than capable of doing that, and doing it pretty well. So we got a new console, and I was put in charge of programming and merging all of that stuff together. And that became pretty much where I was for the rest of my career at Splash. This was right at probably around 99, 98-ish is when that happened. We got some additional fixtures in as well at that point. And as things progressed and the economies got worse for Splash, they tried to eliminate more and more labor. And one of the ways that they did that was to bring in a show control system. So I was put in charge of programming and operating the show control system. And when I left Splash the first time, I was running lighting, audio, lasers, and yeah, pretty much lighting, audio, and lasers, all out of that one show control platform. So it
Wow.
it just kind of coalesced down into, and it all had to do with labor costs,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun when we had a full and a big show and a big crew, and I got to float around and try a lot of different things. That was a lot of fun for me. And we went on with that for, I don't know, a couple of years anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, putting all those people out of work to running it all for one system. I don't know if I'd have that much faith in the system. You know, people can make mistakes, but one thing goes wrong in an overall controlling system. I don't know if you.
Yeah. Well, my position on it is I think that a lot of the automated functions that we have are amazing, and the things that you can do are amazing, but you always need to have a human, a knowledgeable human, watching over what's going on.
Yep.
Because, as you say, things can fail. I've had time code issues lately, and I've never had time code issues before. And we discovered, after 6 months worth of trying to troubleshoot and trying to figure out what the problem was, we discovered that there was a piece of equipment that had been designed in for this particular show, and that I think ended up being replaced by another piece of equipment of the same type, the same piece of equipment, but this one was another unit. So the old unit broke down, they replaced it with another one, and I guess this one was set up or was acting differently, and it screwed up the entire timecode network such that the cues were not being received. The timestamps, the time stream wasn't being received by the lighting console, so cues weren't happening. And people were in dark. So it became, and it's a heavy time-coded show, so the cues happen like bam, 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 like that. And you end up as the board op. You got to get light on stage, and even if it's not in time with the music, you got to have light on stage. You can't, if you've got a performer on that stage, you need to make sure that you get to that cue that has light on the stage for that performer.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we've been doing that, and I think we finally got it resolved here this past week. But yeah, and you never know when that was going to happen. So the operators had to sit there and just be ready, at any given song, maybe that first cue gets missed, maybe the first 5 cues get missed, maybe, so you'd have to keep up with them, and that was a little stressful for a few months.
I imagine so.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's great when it works. It looks amazing, but there's got to be somebody there. You can't, just because we have all of this automation doesn't mean that the people have to go away. And even at Splash, fortunately, the CDC requires that there be a laser safety officer there at the show within instant access of the e-stop button on those lasers. So even though I was controlling the cues on the lasers, there had to be somebody, and that was Glenn. There had to be somebody in that laser booth during the show. So they didn't get a chance to eliminate that, until they eliminated the lasers.
Yeah.
Same thing with the audio. I mean, because it was all tracks for the most part and a few mics, the A1 wasn't really running. But if something were to fail, he would have to be able to get out to the audio console and fix whatever the problem was, whatever it might happen to be. So you don't eliminate people, and I think that management had optimistic. They were hopeful that they could get rid of a lot of people, and it doesn't quite work that way.
No, and it shouldn't. is just if you have audio passing through the system or something like that, you need a guy that knows audio to go fix stuff. Like you just said, you have lighting stuff, you got to have a lighting guy. You have lasers, you need to have somebody to go fix the lasers, or
Yep.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, automation. I'll give it its due. Automation is awesome. Time coding a show, doing that because it stays consistent. If it runs, everything runs great every night, every show, which we know it won't. Something's going to happen on some shows sometime during that week or month or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it stays consistent. It's on the money. There's never a doubt. If something is wrong or a light is wrong or laser went out, it stays consistent.
Yeah.
And it does. It looks phenomenal when it does that. But still, I like having. I prefer to have. I would rather just have someone calling the cues, and having a person do it. I don't know. Old school, yeah, I guess it's a little bit old school, but that's my preference. So okay. Well, that was Splash and its fun stuff.
You weren't there when we had to take out the pool, I think.
No, I was not there. Yeah, the pool was still there. All the water effects, everything was still there when I left in '94. Because I left August 1st of '94.
Yeah.
Actually, I left just before that because I started. My first day was July 31st of '94 here in this hotel, and I sat here for 30 more years. Hard to believe that.
Yeah, they made a lot of changes. They cut the water out. And then about maybe a year later, eliminated the pool. We had to take that out. Eliminated the ice at some point. The ice, that's an interesting Splash story. We put the ice in, and we had a set of panels, stages, platforms, essentially without legs, that we would put down on top of the ice when we weren't doing the ice number. So doors would close. We would roll a big cart out, and about 6 guys would carry these things over, lay them down on the ice, these big 4x8 heavy sheets. So you're walking on ice, laying them down. So that in and of itself was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So we would lay that staging down. The show, when it closed, when it at the end of the show, that flooring was in, those platforms, the ice covers were in. We went on dark, and for like a week or so, around Christmas or Comdex or whatever, we went dark for a week or 10 days. And during that time, the compressor for the ice died. And the hotel, the maintenance engineers on the hotel saw that had happened. They got a warning and a notice that had happened. So they went to the head of maintenance and they mentioned to him, "Hey, it's died. We need to get it fixed." And the head of facilities said, "Oh, well, we can wait on that. They're not there right now anyway, so don't worry about it." So we walked in. Literally, the first guys. I was one of the first guys to walk in when we came back, when we opened back up. Walked in and put one foot on those platforms on the stage, expecting it to be totally solid. You just walk straight across, and no, we weren't sinking. It was like we were all of a sudden surfing, because everything was floating. So it was all
there you
moving
go. Yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah,
on a thing of water. So that became. Of course, we couldn't open the show that night, but. Yeah, that was a big deal. That was pretty funny, actually. I mean, it wasn't, looking back on it, was funny. It wasn't real funny then, but yeah.
No, it's trying to figure out how to make it happen and still get a show on, and you just realize it's not going to.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to call it. Sometimes when the old moniker is, the show must go on. That's true. But sometimes you get to a thing, it's not going to
happen.
No, because you guys are still doing Globe of Death and everything there.
Oh, yeah,
right? Yeah. You can't have Globe of Death sitting out there on a floating water platform thing. Yeah, that ain't going to happen. Yep. So, yeah, that was a fun one, too. No, that was I enjoyed the years I was there. I love doing shows. I detest doing convention work. 90+% of our work in this local is now convention work. I wouldn't want to come into this local right now. and try to make a living just because I don't want to work in a convention center.
Yeah.
I want to be a stagehand. I want to work on a stage. I don't
Yeah.
want to be a convention tech. I want to be a stagehand. You know. But anyhow, that's that's pretty funny. Let's move on to let's see. After Splash, where'd you go? You went over to one of the lighting companies, right? Morpheus.
No, after I left Splash and went to Tournament of Kings.
Tournament of Kings. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I jumped ahead of myself. I was trying to remember what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, I went to Tournament of Kings. I took over as head electric. The first head electric, Pete Simmons, he and I were friends, and when he retired, he recommended me for the position. So they gave me the job, and I was there for, I don't know, a couple of years. I have a long history. I go back a long time with Tournament of Kings. Just, I don't know, it's how that happens. It was one of my first jobs here in Vegas. I got on as pyrotechnician. I did the outdoor dragon show. Do you remember when the Excalibur had a dragon, an animatronic dragon, and they had pyro every hour on the hour, kind of thing? Yeah, I was out on the strip side of the hotel. Now it's just dry. There's I don't think there's a lake there or anything else, or a pond. But back then there was a little pond. The dragon would sail out, and animatronic Merlin would come out from his little hut and shoot off some pyro, and the dragon would fire some pyro back, and of course the dragon was vanquished and had to crawl back into his lair, which was underneath the bridge actually that goes from the strip up to the Port Cochere entrance for the Excalibur. Okay. So I was brought in to run that a couple of days a week, and they ended up being shorthanded in the dirt on Tournament of Kings. So asked me if on the days that I wasn't doing pyro outside, if I'd come on inside and do some cues in the dirt for essentially being a deck carpenter for Tournament of Kings, which is at that time was a significantly different show than it is now. That was a tough gig.
Yeah, my brother worked that show, and he said it was physically very, very demanding.
Oh yeah.
Because you're running around in dirt, you're dragging carpet out, you're dragging this out, you're pushing this, all these things, but you're doing it through dirt, which everything sinks in, you sink in a bit, A lot of resistance moving anything out there.
Yeah.
No, he said it was very demanding on that show.
Nowhere near as hard now. Now it's a much simpler show for the guys. But yeah, the carpet was always all of our least favorite thing. All of us on the crew. There's 6 carpenters on the crew, and all of us, that was our least favorite cue to do. So you alternated. 2 guys would do one show, 2 guys would do another show, and you would take that. I don't know how big that piece was. It was probably a good 40 feet wide and at least 20 or 30 feet long. I mean, it was huge. And we'd drag that out at a run. You'd have to get a dead run, try to get some air under the carpet, drag that thing out to mid-stage so that these Mongolian acrobats could come out and do their act, kind of like as an entr'acte. And when they were done and they had left, then you had to drag that stupid carpet back. When you got back to the stable area, which was, the show's up in the arena is like 3/4, so the one side of the arena is where the stables are. So there's a door and a curtain there that you drag it through that opening, and you, at a dead run, or as much of a dead run as you can manage, you're dragging that thing up, and then you hit a hill. It's the ramp that goes up to the parking lot. So you run out the loading dock door and straight up that hill so that the entire carpet gets as far off stage as possible. We all hated that cue. That was terrible.
Yeah, my brother would say, you'd have the performers out there, warming up before the show and loosening up and stuff like that. And right next to them were all the dirt guys, basically stretching and trying to get loose because you knew it was coming, and
Yep.
get ready to get out there and do some heavy humping out there.
Yep, it's a different show. We had one of the cues that I had, or that all of us on the show depending on the day, you know. But one of the cues that we had is to pass off the jousting spears. So in that part of the show where the knights would joust with each other, they had these balsa wood spears or jousting spears that they would, you know, of course, mangle up as they hit each other's shields and that kind of thing. So the winner, of course, now he's got to make another round to joust with the next knight. So he gets a new spear. So the way the cue was structured was that I think there was a guy downstage in the arena and a guy upstage in the arena. And you were standing off to the side of the arena, and you had a spear in your hand. So I had a rack of spears. I would take out a good spear, and I would hold it. And I would hold it in my left hand. The rider would come on his horse, usually at a gallop, and turn and pass off to me on my right hand the busted up jousting spear. He would circle around me as close to me as he possibly could, because that was their challenge. I didn't particularly care for it, but they got a lot of fun out of it. He would circle around as close as he possibly could with his horse and take the good spear out of my left hand and set himself up for the next joust. Mm-hmm. And the horses, when they're at a dead gallop like that, and with all the lights and all the audience and everything else, they get excited. And when they get excited, it's not unusual for them to take a little nip out of your shoulder. And so that would happen occasionally to people doing that cue. And they try those nights. They would try to see how close they could get to you, and it was a chicken kind of challenge, you know, to see if you were going to move, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, 1,500-pound animal trying to push you around. I'm not going to let it stepped on or anything like that. No. You know, sorry guys. If that's funny to you, well, when you go by and I slap the horse on his hind quarter and it takes off, joke on you too. Yeah. Been around horses plenty. They're great animals, but yeah, give them their wide berth. So that was cool. That's some good stories from there. That's Excalibur and Splash. Nice. And I think we're getting close to the end of this one. We'll go on and do some more in-depth on a couple of things. The one about Magic Mike and having to do the lighting is one I want to really get to eventually, and because that is just mind-boggling what you had to do to get that show lit and get it ready to open, and amazing. But, you know, we always say the show must go on, so, and we're supposed to mean it when we say it. So why don't we call that there for right now, and we're going to come back with another episode on the show. So until then, Talbot, take it away.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.